Hi, my name is Ava, and today I'm going to talk about toxic parenting. This first thing is a parenting style, which is named crunchy parenting. And I know the name sounds a little bit weird, but it's named this just because it's for parents who want to raise their kids naturally, and it's sometimes called crunchy or granola. Just has this name because it's about being natural. They don't want their kids to have sugars. They don't want their kids to have bad things with a bunch of chemicals. So most of the times they don't let their kids eat regular stuff that most kids do. They want them to have sugar-free lifestyle. They don't want them to have processed foods. A lot of the times they don't want them to have vaccines either. And I could go into how bad it is for the parents who don't want their kids vaccinated, but that is a whole nother topic in itself. But they mostly just don't want their kids to have the things that most normal Americans have because they feel that those things will be bad for them, and they just want to raise them as safe and naturally as possible. But oftentimes this style of parenting can turn very toxic just because these kids don't get to have life the same way that their friends do, and they can often feel alienated. And I've seen other posts on social media where they talk about this and how it's affected them.
Life as a crunchy kid, pretty much anything containing sugar, dairy, processed meats, GMO, corn syrup, non-organic, even fruit juice because of the high natural sugar in juice. We were not allowed to have any of it. I went to the movies, went to a birthday party, went to any kind of get-together. I was not allowed to eat any of the food. It was so extreme that I was going to a friend's house and her father was making biscuits and gravy. So we sat at the table with all of our friends and ate apples. It was humiliating. It got to a point that I didn't even want to go out anymore because I wasn't allowed to eat anything, and every kid thought that I was weird. It caused a lot of embarrassment.
And I understand that there's levels to this way of parenting. Not everyone who wants their kid to have a more natural lifestyle wants to alienate them from others, but it can turn into that, especially with social media, where you see one video of this mom, for example, not letting her kids have food with added sugars. And you see this and think that maybe it's a good idea for your kid too. And this turns into watching more videos and more videos about how you can raise your kid naturally and about how specific things are bad for them. I think there is a lot of fear-mongering, especially with this parenting, where they think so many things are gonna harm their children. And there's a lot of bad things out there, but especially like the people who don't give their kids vaccines. That's probably gonna make their life worse if they do get these sicknesses that most people don't have that could probably kill them. But certain parents are worried about giving their kid the vaccine because they read some misinformation that told them that it might give their kid autism. And it just doesn't make sense to me, because why would you not want to keep your kids safe from other sicknesses just because you're worried that this other thing that's not true might happen, even though it hasn't really happened to other people? And I do support the lifestyle of wanting to raise your kids naturally, and I think that's also why a lot of the people who parent like this have a good amount of money and or are white, just because this is a parenting style where you can't do this unless you're very financially stable, because buying natural products and buying foods that don't have contaminants and just other products like that can be very expensive. And as I start to buy things for myself, I realize that I can't buy this natural thing because I don't have the money for that. And so this is a specific style where you have to be in that tax bracket so you can just get hooked into the echo chamber so easily, because a lot of the parents are like each other and it just keeps on going. Once you're on social media and you get hooked into this specific type of content, your algorithm realizes that you like that, and it's just going to keep pushing you deeper and deeper until you end up into just the weird cult-like toxic parenting. Now, my next topic is not a parenting style, but it is a very toxic tool for parenting. And this is troubled teens programs. And basically in these programs, you send your kid off, usually in the wilderness or some type of barren area, either the forest or the desert. There are adults that run these camps, and your children usually stay there for a few weeks to a few months. And they essentially just try to reform these kids by making them do extremely hard labor, and that's supposed to teach them life lessons. I am very against this type of parenting just because most of the times the kids that go to these places aren't even that bad. You could just figure it out by yourself or with the help of a therapist maybe, but they choose to send their kids to these places so that their hard hard work might make them a better person. And yeah, I guess hard work could help you, but if you're struggling in school and you're smoking and you're just skipping classes and doing bad things, forcing someone to do manual labor is not really gonna stop them from doing those things. And a lot of the times, it's really scary for these children because the parents don't actually know what's going on there. It's just them and the adults that run it. So there could be so much misconduct, and there has been misconduct reported at these programs. I don't understand why parents would still choose to send their kids there when they know that it can oftentimes just give them trauma rather than having them receive the help that they need. One specific program that has been exposed in the recent years is named Turnabout Ranch, and this was a place that was heavily endorsed on Dr. Phil. And he would send these troubled teens there so that they could be reformed, and essentially that was his way of therapy for these parents that brought their kids on the show. And one of the girls that was on Dr. Phil made a YouTube video in 2021 talking about her experience there and just the trauma that she faced. She explained how they treated her and the other teens badly. For example, when she first got there, they made her stand in this little circle. It was a circle made of stone and a little teepee, and she had to stay there for 3 days straight. And they wouldn't let her go to sleep, they wouldn't let her talk or do anything, and you just had to sit there and reflect on what you've done. And if you tried to go to sleep or tried to get comfortable, they would make you get out of that position or they would wake you up. And it's examples like this where I don't understand how the people who run these programs would even think that that would help a troubled child. Because how is isolating someone and making them think about the bad things that they've done or about what's happening in their life for 3 days straight gonna help them change and become a more well-adjusted kid? It just kind of feels like these programs are there to torture the kids, or they serve as a punishment for all the bad things they've done. And a lot of the times, once these kids get out of the programs, they turn and do the same bad things again, just because there was no therapy. It was just a punishment. And sometimes when you get punished, it stops you from doing that bad thing, but it doesn't always work. But this might also not be entirely the parents' fault, just because a lot of the times these programs are advertised as almost like a summer camp, where in the videos that you see about them, they're taking care of horses and they're chopping wood and they're farming, just nice things where maybe your kid can just disconnect from life, get back to the basics and live naturally. But it's not as nice as it seems in those advertisements. And stuff like that was shown on Dr. Phil when they talk about Turnabout Ranch. They would show just these videos of kids having fun with the animals and being in nature. But it wasn't just that. It often was very traumatizing to them and would leave them even worse than when they came into that program. I think this is also a part of a bigger problem among the different generations, where I've just noticed that a lot of the times the older generation just feels that younger people are so entitled to what they have, and I do agree that some people are, but of course there's people that are entitled. I don't think that just because we have all of these new things that they did not have, that means that we are entitled. And I feel like that is also just a bad mentality to have, just because it makes them think that we don't have anything bad to go through. We don't have a reason to not be extremely happy all the time. We don't have a reason to feel bad sometimes. And I feel like that's why these programs exist, because they think there's no other reason why this child would be acting out besides the fact that they're spoiled. And that's usually not the reason. And a lot of the times these kids just need therapy, but their parents reached out to the wrong resource and it ended up hurting them. This next parenting style is sort of a way to combat the toxic parenting that I spoke about before. And this is called gentle parenting. And it's basically just a style where parents don't want to harm their kids. They don't want to be physical with them. They don't want to give them trauma. And so they're trying their best to just understand where the child is coming from and understand why they did that bad thing. And instead of just seeing your kid make a mistake and punishing them for that, it turns that into a learning moment. And there also is a punishment, but it's not like slapping your kid. It's a more gentle version. So for example, if your kid drew all over the walls and you notice that, instead of going and hitting them and telling them never do that again, you ask them first, why did they do that thing? Why did they want to draw on the walls? Why did they express themselves like that? And then you explain to them how they're not supposed to do that, and there's other ways that you can release your creativity. And then you make that child clean it up. So instead of using brute force and hitting the child because you're mad that they did that, you turn it into a learning moment so that your child receives these valuable lessons from you, and at the same time, they're not extremely scared of you. Because the bad parents in this scenario really just make the child fear them. And I do understand that your child does need to fear you to some extent, to where they don't think that they can do anything and not receive any action. But when your child only fears you, that's not a good relationship to have. And that's how a lot of parents are, where their kid will do something childish because they're a child, and they get extremely mad and they use brute force, and then their child is just scared of them, and they don't even understand why that was a bad thing. They're just told, don't do that, instead of explaining why you shouldn't do that, or even being asked why they wanted to do it in the first place. I do get that this parenting style is harder than just using force with the child. I understand that it's not meant for all parents. Not all parents can do that. But it is a good thing to learn about and just be able to understand your child more. This style of parenting does face a lot of scrutiny though, because the toxic parents think that they're just being too soft and they're not actually parenting their kid, or they're not disciplining them. But that's not true. And I even believed this. For a second, I don't know why, but I only saw the toxic parents talking about how gentle parenting isn't actually parenting your child. So I just kind of assumed that it was like the parents that just let their kids run around the store and they don't say anything, but it's not that. That's a whole different thing. I think a lot of people have misconstrued gentle parenting to where people don't understand the fundamentals of it. And I hope that more people can get educated on that. When I have kids, I want to use the gentle parenting style just because I don't want to be a toxic parent. I don't want to pass down trauma to my children just because I was not knowledgeable of how to parent correctly. So I just hope that more parents really look into what it means to be a parent. I understand that in some circumstances, you can't always be extremely prepared for your kids. But when they're still little, try to find more personal ways to raise them instead of just meeting them with harshness whenever they do something bad. Because kids do bad things all the time. That's what they do. That's why they're kids. Just know that every child is different and each child's needs are different. You can't parent all children the same way, and the parenting styles you see on social media might not work for you and your children. So this is something where you just need to look at these different styles and take a little bit from here and take a little bit from there. But don't get so sucked into it to the point where you're almost in a parenting cult. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's not as hard to get sucked into one of those as you think it would be. So don't try to copy and paste everything you see online. Mold your parenting style to your child rather than trying to fit your child into these different parenting styles. So if you like this video, please leave a like and comment down below your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Bye.